China Talk, joined on the panelists with actually a very special guest from Shanghai, actually, in the same room as me. So if you hear a little bit of an echo, I'm going to try to lower my voice so I don't echo off him too poorly because he's in the gaming house with me. It is Obscurica, GPL, expert, LoL esports writer, GG Chronicle, has a few other sites underneath his belt. Joined with him are the typical panelists. It's going to be Raz, our LSPL expert, as well as Drexen and Kelsey Moser, esports heaven, Leaguepedia or... Is it Wikipedia, Raz?
Esportspedia.
Esportspedia, excuse me.
The other site.
I got a shout out anyway. And
yeah.
and Kelsey Moser representing On Gamers as well as LOL Esports. So first and foremost, we didn't cover China Talk last week just because there was kind of a lull. Transfer period ended, things like that. We had some very big news this last week, though, so we get to talk about that. And of course, it is Flame, and it was finally announced that Flame is going to be going to LGD.
Why would
you
open with Flame and not Kakao? I'm just saying.
I'm opening with Flame because more people care about Flame than Kakao. I'm going to make that statement.
And also,
My
LGD was closer to getting gypped from the spot at Worlds. So.
Well, I'm just saying that Kakao opened. That Kakao was the first acquisition.
My Twitter feed dictates our topics, and Flame is the topic of choice.
Well, I guess it's better than Reddit.
So it was confirmed that Flame took a ridiculous deal to LGD. I have heard through the rumor mill, though, that Flame wasn't necessarily very excited about it. He tried to get out of the deal afterwards, but effectively owner said, or I don't know if it was the owner, but someone basically told him, like, unless you have X amount of money to spend to break said contract or buy your contract out, you're playing.
The owner talked to the people who were trying. It's not that he didn't want to go to LGD specifically, it's just that other people were trying to give him bit better offers after he'd already signed, and then the owner said, told the other owners to back off pretty much.
So this is what I want to talk about. I want to talk about old LGD versus new LGD. And I feel like we've kind of skirted around LGD, like, historically throughout the context of the show. And for the Western fans that may not know as much about LGD, they're like the curse of China. Like, for forever fourth, forever fifth, kind of that mid-tier team. They've had some really amazing rising star talents, but they've kind of been weighted down. They've changed roster up quite a few times, especially from the last season, or excuse me, the previous year coming up into the last year. And of course now, as we come up into our most current year, they've changed up their roster again. Famously now they have Imp running around on their team as well. So have some big star talent there, but kind of give me the breakdown. Like, who is LGD? What is their history with LPL and kind of their play style? Anyone?
So here's my thing with LGD, because obviously I have a thing with everything. Historically, for me, LGD has been the team that doesn't necessarily... They have Wayless, right? And Wayless was really good as a player, but even I felt like he wasn't necessarily mechanically gifted. He was just, from my perspective, really good at understanding minion waves and getting, like, these ridiculous waves by either pushing out the waves or going to farm elsewhere and taking these opportunities with minion waves when you watch him, because when he's ahead is when he goes crazy, but he can just maximize the advantages so that he can go crazy. Not necessarily, he won't, like, make these crazy outplays when he's behind. So I don't think it's just, like, raw skill. I think he just is that good with minion waves and making advantages. And so even from that perspective, he's like their star, crazy, great player, right? But LGD has just been the smart team. They're the smart team that kind of walks around some of these more talented brute forcing teams and makes, like, the side lane pushes, things like that. That's kind of their identity with PYL. Just the advantages of LGD that they have such a strong shot caller in PYL, and he pretty much, as far as I can tell and as far as I've been told, controls everything that LGD does, and that's when they succeed, is when he has almost complete control of what their team is doing. And they had, obviously, not a very strong top laner, not the best jungler. in the past, and so now they're replacing their top laner with a rotating roster with Acorn and Flame. So.
Here's what kind of kills me, though, because again, like talking about like the full history of LGD, they've exchanged a lot of their pieces over like the course of even this new rendition of them having Wayless, because before they had like Rina and Star as their two solo laners, and it feels like LGD keeps replacing their solo laners or people who they deem to have a weak champion pool. But Chwin is still on the roster, their jungler. And it doesn't, like, to me, it doesn't matter if you put Flame up there, if you put Acorn up there, if you put Imp on AD carry, which they benched XQ, which we've said multiple times is kind of like the OQ of China, like a guy who has a ton of potential. And yes, Drexen has said multiple times that Imp is going to be the most immediate upgrade, but the fact that this guy is riding a bench and not a starting position, and by this guy I mean XQ, is pretty much a huge shame. Like, LGD in its newest format, I mean, is this still going to be a contending team? Is this going to be a team that makes Worlds this time around as opposed to just barely misses it? Because in the LPL regionals, they barely lost their chance. I mean, Cool had to go 1v9 on Ahri. It was like, hey guys, hold my beer. I got to carry OMG to qualify for Worlds.
If someone else wants to answer first.
I was just gonna say, I think that largely depends on a lot of things, like how well the communication is hurt compared to other teams that are utilizing like multi-regional rosters. And additionally, obviously there were immediate upgrades in their position. Like Imp is insanely good, Flame and Acorn are insanely good, and 17 was like okay, but he wasn't like a star or anything like that. No pun intended. But yeah. Yeah, the thing though is like that they still have Chwin, and like world-class junglers are going to roll all over him. But at the same time, some of the better junglers are now in LPL, so that also means that he'll be getting better practice. I don't know if that just means he'll be getting steamrolled harder, or if he'll actually improve his skill set and improve his champion pool, just because the competition's a bit steeper, and that you won't be able to be a mediocre jungler and make it in LPL this season. At least that's my thought process. So I think it depends on a lot of things, but overall, I do think that they just theoretically off of individual strengths, they're a better team. But that doesn't necessarily make them a better team. It kind of depends on just how things go.
And
I would definitely say that individuals. Sorry about that. Individual strengths may be a little overrated, given that you have both Flame and Imp on the same team. They're both going to want to be the main carry. If PYL can be the main shot caller, that's one thing. But he's facing two high-profile players and kind of high confidence players, to put it politely, that really want to take over the spotlight, and that might cause more conflicts than the old LGD roster would have faced.
I think LGD, like, honestly, it really does depend on the environment of the LPL in which this team can be successful, because it feels like every team is shoring up a really massive lineup, or at least a good portion of teams.
Here's my thing, though.
Yeah.
Because I want to ask you a little bit question to push it farther, because I think you're hitting on something that's very important. LGD, like as Kelsey has kind of defined, and I think everyone agrees, it's been the strategy team. They're more about manipulating the map and always making sure that they make a trade or something, as opposed to like brute force. And they've now exchanged kind of two roles for that brute force mechanics, but they've brought in the language barrier. Yeah. And so if you're a team who historically has identified your playstyle as being the the smart team, the what SK in Europe had that reputation of being like the analytical team. We'll go with Cloud9 for NA and things like that. Like that was LGD. Like they were the smart team, but now is PYL, like, factor that now into the statement that you're going to make? Because this is what I'm curious about. Or do you think that just the true star power of Imp and Flame will be able to just like carry this team? Because they have a ton of talent across the board. Like PYL, probably one of the best supports in China. Wayless is amazing. Like he had a great rookie year when he entered the LPL. Flame, of course, like the faker of top lane.
I just wanted to be able to say, because that's a really good point, and I think off of that, they will have to change their playstyle, because I feel like they were the smart team because they had to be, based on the lineup that they had before. I mean, XQ was great. The bottom lane, their mid lane was amazing, but the other lanes, like I guess specifically their jungler and their top laner, wasn't all the best. And now that they have amazing solo laners, and not only just amazing solo laners, self-sufficient solo laners, like it's come to the point where it's so much easier for that team to just kind of like for Tron to, like just come back and just play as kind of like as a supportive jungler, just really ward around. It depends. I think they'll have to change their strategy as a team, and if once they do, they will become because it'll be a lot more. It'll be a ton more difficult to really play a smarter game as they used to with that language barrier. So it'll be interesting to see how. I think they'll be successful compared to the newer teams that have shored up a massive lineup and also has that language barrier.
I let you all talk, but PYL. This is kind of what I was saying before.
Mm-hmm.
The strengths of LGD has always been the control that PYL has over the team. You hear the stories about XQ wasn't allowed to play anything but Lucian because PYL told him he couldn't.
Oh yeah.
You know that when PYL, if you watch the games and you see if PYL is with the team, they usually do well in their team fights and in their movements. But if he's not, then they don't. They kind of fall apart. So the strength of the team being in PYL's control over it is going to be so much harder with a language barrier. So that's one thing. The other issue I wanted to touch on is you talked about Flame being a self-sufficient solo laner. You hear all these stories about Flame makes his jungler sit top.
Yeah.
This is something that we've heard a lot about, and you can kind of see in VODs. On the one hand, I think this could be good for Chuen because it'll give him a direction. It'll kind of give him something that he does every game. And his style is kind of easy to read anyway, just in terms of early game jungle pathing. So it's not like the end of the world that he suddenly has to camp top. But on the other hand, I because of that, I disagree with your comment about them being self-sufficient solo laners, quote unquote. So,
well, here's my thing. Oh, go, Drexen.
No, actually, I was just going to state that, yeah. I mean, the whole, they'll be able to individually use their star-studded lineup to, crush lanes and stuff. That doesn't really apply when all the other teams are employing the same thing. And that's the main issue. It's not like LGD's alone in this strategy. I mean, a lot of other teams are picking up star-studded lineups and stuff like that. But in their defense, I will say that the roles that are being, swapped out do kind of... they kind of have that EDG effect where stylistically it kind of works the same. PYL fits very similar in his playstyle and his role in the team as Mata, and Imp is very used to playing with Mata. So, granted, the communication will be an issue. I think stylistically that lane matchup is pretty good. And also 17, when he was at his best, he was playing split pushing jacks and stuff like that. So, I think in a sense that kind of pads it a little bit. But it's also kind of neutralized by the fact that, the star-studded lineup is faced up against other star-studded lineups, so...
I think they just have the best kind of talent, though. And even though I do agree that Flame is a bit of... I wouldn't say it's a problem, but it's kind of a looming
assuming,
issue.
though, that
is
Flame even starts.
Oh,
because
yeah,
right now, they have two amazing top laners. Let's just use the word amazing. You have Acorn... with his pedigree of being on Samsung Blue and everything that comes along with that, and then you have Flame, Flame had his really big high point, but not that he's not still amazing, but the carry jungler kind of fell off. Flame's effectiveness kind of fell off a little bit. He wasn't living up to the reputation that really made him famous. So, I mean, do you even start Flame? Why would you spend so much money if you're not going to start him? And then again, then that means Acorn sitting on the bench as well as XQ. So is LGD going to buy a second spot in LSPL and run a sister team with EDG and EDG Future, or?
They're doing the same thing Edward Gaming is, right? Which is running a rotating roster. Meaning that they'll switch out their top laner, and
That's not what I heard. I heard that EDG Future is running Pawn and Deft on their roster because they want the team to make tonight.
Okay, then never mind. But I've heard many times that they're running a rotating roster. But I know that LGD has said they're running a rotating roster for sure.
Okay, well, my understanding is that EDGF is running Pawn and Deft because they want the team, Pawn and Deft, to carry the team to LPL. That's the idea behind it.
Like the confusing aspect about that is because they have two strong Koreans that they themselves have even propped up for EDGF, and they even made the point of switching out their Korean jungler so that they could have a Chinese jungler and run with those. Like, and then they've said many times by the end of the year, we'll be as good as Pawn. So I don't understand. Like I don't know. That's not important. We're talking about LGD. LGD, I know, has. Like, they've even gone about it a way that makes a little bit more sense, right? Where they have a very utility-style top laner in Acorn, and they have a very carry-style top laner in Flame. They play different champions, they play different styles. Depending on what composition they want to run, they can swap them out. It seems almost straightforward. And I've been told that that's what they're going to do directly, so I'm assuming that's actually what they're going to do.
This is interesting. I forget who I was talking to the other day, but I was curious if people thought that the OGN style, because now that people are running kind of more padded OGN teams since the sister teams were abolished, if this was going to become the norm, that people would start running like 6-man teams, kind of what TPA used to do, and like you said, like stylistically swap out the players to meet like demands to certain strategies, because then how do you prepare, pick, and ban against that? You know what I'm saying? Because like teams could now, not only are you bringing like this set of strategies, but if you have, like you said, the dynamics between Acorn and Flame, now you're bringing a completely different dynamic and like not just one or two more strategies, but like several along with that.
At this point, I hasten to interject that TPA didn't really so much run a 6-man team as they had Chowie play all the unimportant events because the coach didn't trust him yet. So it technically never actually existed.
And that's my
how about with,
concern
with
about the
Snoopy?
rotating roster, because we see EasyHoon play with like Faker. We see EasyHoon play in SK Telecom during preseason, right? And during these games that are pretty much show matches, essentially. How many people actually think he's going to play a lot during OGN at all?
Well, what about with what was the team? I'm totally spacing the team where they had two junglers. Snoopy was the other one, and he was more of a utility style jungler. And then they had another guy that was more of like a carry style jungler. Yeah. Okay, there you go. Like I couldn't remember if it was when he was on CLGE or if it was when he transferred to EG. I didn't want to make that statement.
Well, the team was rebranded to Evil Geniuses. So.
Yeah.
I'm not actually convinced they actually planned to kick Snoopy out until he fell off later. I think it was more like a wake-up call for him.
Yeah, because if I remember, they were going to try to bench him, and then they alternated between the two, and that was when Snoopy started playing better or whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, but that's what they did. Is they did run a Snoopy with the more utility style junglers.
Here's my problem with the entire idea of a rotating roster, because that's what teams are trying, or at least it seems like teams in
I just
regional.
lost connection, so.
Ooh. But yeah, it seems like teams really try to aim for a rotating roster, or at least kind of like send that image out that that's what they want. But I feel like that's way too much to ask for, because it's probably going to turn out that there's going to be one player that is better for that team. Like there may not be like one player's not essentially better than the other, like Acorn and Flame that have different strengths, but which strength is better for the team as a whole and the team's play style? And I think once they find out that Acorn or Flame is better, well, apparently they just paid so much for Flame, even though Acorn has been on the table for quite some time and he's been playing for quite some time. Once they find out who's better, they'll just stick with that player. And so I don't think that's even a possibility, because one player will just be better. Yeah.
And that's kind of my feeling too. Is just team chemistry is super delicate, so you're just gonna like flop it in and out all the time, and that's really hard. I imagine that's really hard to get down, especially because your top laners also have a language barrier. So you're saying you're going to have the time that a player with a language barrier is going to have to learn how to play with the team. That's really hard to commit to, but
Okay, then where do you put Acorn or Flame? Where do you put massive amounts of money, like that you just spend on these like this is what I'm saying. Like logically, this doesn't really make sense to me.
Well, where do you put Save? Where do you put Fly? Where do you put? I mean, you're in theory putting them on Young Glory, but I mean they have other players. Like, where do you put all these players that World Elite spent so much money on? Like, they probably spent a lot of money on OB and a lot of money on Axie. Even if they're not these high caliber players, but it's just, I mean,
they did.
They're. I think part of it is that they're going to stream with them, because I know that the way streaming contracts work is teams actually can make a lot of money if they have their players stream for them, or they're going to keep them in house to play against the players on the main lineup.
What do the players think? Like, coming into the house, they probably think that they're either going to get the first starting lineup, or at least maybe even they believe in the rotating roster. I'm not so sure. So.
I mean,
I'm sure they're clear with them.
They're coming to China to retire. Effectively, has kind of been like the running joke, and I think it reflected pretty recently in Dade or it's specifically Dade's performance in what was it? It
Demacia Cup.
Was it Demacia?
And WGT. He played WGT too and kind of goofed off. So,
and this is now moving to kind of the next big set of acquisitions, and it's going to be Invictus Gaming's acquisitions of Kakao and Rookie and replacement of their former jungler Illusion. And I don't know if Zitai stepped back into a coaching position, if he's just staying on the lineup as like a streamer, if he's going to completely step away from competitive. We've always talked about how Zitai could be amazing, but he just never put in the effort. So that one makes sense. I'd heard that Illusion was going to be retiring, but then some people tell me that Illusion's not retiring. I mean, someone set the record straight. Are Kakao and Rookie stepping in permanently?
Illusion has been confirmed as going to Young Glory.
Yeah.
So Kakao, I know for sure, is going to be an IG. The question that remains is, are they going to run Save or are they going to run Rookie?
Different
Fly...
roles. Or wait.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So they would
that.
either run Save with Zitai or they would run Rookie with Pokemon.
Ooh, that's depressing.
And they played actually in WGT during group stage. They actually played with both of those lineups in different games. And the more successful one, based on results, based on the fact that Invictus Gaming was the only team to beat the team that won the tournament in group stage, they played with the Pokemon Rookie roster. And
really?
The other two games that they lost, they played with Save Zitai. So, I don't know.
Same question then. Identify old Invictus Gaming to its new form.
They had... I mean, let's just let Riles rant about it. Let's do that. That'll be fun.
That team will never... I don't want to throw them off and say that they'll never change. But...
Well, let's be blunt, Raz. Invictus Gaming in its old form was never going to win anything. It was never going to be a top team. It was never going to be a world contender. And right now, it seems like every single team is buying up all of these S-class Korean talents to make a more viable run at World. At least this is kind of the consensus that I'm getting from a lot of teams, not just in China, but globally.
Yeah.
So it makes sense from that perspective that Invictus Gaming needs to change something. But again, we've talked about the language barrier with LGD, and were these the pieces that you would have changed with Invictus Gaming to make a run at Worlds?
The biggest issue is the top laner. I don't... Even just their play, their strategy, their decision making has always been an issue, but I don't think they're actually hitting it. And the biggest issue, there's a lot. I can't keep saying that there's the biggest issue, because there are a lot, and it comes down to decision making, a supporting team. Do they even have a coach? I'm trying to figure this out.
They used to have a coach. They have a new one. Their old one went to OMG, right?
Well, they also had an analyst after TT went to OMG, and now they have Pumandu and Mata.
Oh, okay.
Mafa, actually.
Oh yeah, sorry, Mafa. Excuse me.
Yeah. So that team they still have time to grow, and I feel like now they have a combination of Korean / top line. Like, it's what I think they need. The biggest change they can make is probably have Save on the top lane. I'm not sure. I don't remember all too well how Pokemon fared in comparison to Youngsu when he was on that, but no, Youngsu's Korean too. Wow,
yeah.
I don't have horrible memory. Yeah, I
Well,
don't know.
to
They have such a big predicament there.
like looking at Invictus Gaming, you have
Wait.
you
Sorry.
have Yangsu.
I just wanted to ask,
Yeah?
like, it works like other regions, doesn't it? So, like, if Yangsu participated in the last split, it doesn't count towards the whole, like, 2 Korean rule?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, so they
they're
can
very
use them.
strict. No, they're very
Oh,
strict.
okay.
Yeah. About the.
All right,
one
just
player.
clarifying that.
Yeah.
My thing is, if I as an IG fan, if I'm looking at Invictus Gaming and I'm identifying its core problems, I'm honestly going to say the top lane, which revolving between Pokemon and Youngsu, obviously the weakest point since PDD's retirement. They lost that true star-studded talent. Not that Youngsu hadn't grown and gotten better over the course of the LPL season, but just still was nothing compared to what they had and what they stylistically needed.
Yeah.
Zatai. I love Zatai. Like everyone knows that I'm a huge Zatai fangirl. I think he's amazing. I think he has the potential. But he honestly is one of the number one problems on Invictus Gaming. As the primary shot caller, Invictus Gaming's calls, they suck. They're awful. That team has like zero direction. And it sometimes just wins just because he decides to show up and play, but consistency is a huge issue there. So this is the thing. You now have two pieces that you can replace. You have Save and you have Rookie, both outstanding in their position. You then have really strong solo laners, but that means that you sacrifice running perhaps the best jungler, or at least in contention alongside Dandy, Kakao. And I'm kind of like, how do you guys personally weight that choice? Would you take and replace the poor pieces in Invictus Gaming, or do you take the all-star studded jungler in in a region where all of this jungle talent is now flooding?
It's
I mean, so
Honestly,
Go ahead.
I'll let you go first.
no, you should go.
yeah.
All right. Honestly, given the current top lane meta favors pretty much passive takes with teleport, I think you can sacrifice top lane for high quality jungle. It makes a little more sense to make sure that Rookie and Kakao can have that synergy together. Like, from my standpoint, it makes more sense for IG to preserve that duel than to worry too much about top at the moment.
But isn't the top lane meta shifting away from a tanky style into a more carry-oriented role, with the buffs happening to Jax, the standout performance of Aurelia's, and the return of Renekton?
You're still seeing like Maokai's and other sorts. It's really depending on how the team wants to play it. Like, if they can't have a consistent top lane carry, they can at least have a consistent top lane meat shield.
And here's the thing about Pokemon, and this could have been just... We know that Acorn isn't really a carry-style top laner, and I've been really hard on Pokemon, but the guy did work in WGT when they ran him. He actually played... In the one game they won, which was the one game that they played him, he actually did really well against Acorn. And I think that could have partly been the idea of the jungle pressure, which Chuen isn't going to exert as much pressure as Kakao is going to, just in general. And also, just depends on the top laner. Like, Pokemon isn't the worst top laner in China.
Yeah,
apparently.
but it was PDD. IG...
I know, understand. I understand
when a
that.
carry... I understand, but I'm just like, a carry top laner was a core part of their identity as a team, and when that left, IG really took a nosedive as far as their performance and their consistency. Save is effectively just the perfect replacement for PDD.
Yeah, but if they don't have the same jungler, if they don't have the same mid laner, then it doesn't really it doesn't really matter if the pieces don't fit anymore either. Because, I mean, and the other thing that PDD a while ago was talking about how he would come back to Invictus Gaming if the team asked him to. So I'm guessing that they just decided it wasn't worth it. Like, he'd been retired for too long. They wanted to go in a different direction from the team, because I know Kid, for example, we talked about how good he is at Ezreal and how when Invictus Gaming was doing well in LPL 2014 spring, he's actually said that the reason he played so much Ezreal is because he couldn't get any gold when PDD was the shot caller. So it's possible that the team has made the decision to move away from that kind of top laner.
I think... Okay, actually, I'm starting to realize. I think if you have an amazing jungler, as amazing, of course, as Kakao, your laners will look a lot better, much, just based on how much pressure Kakao is exerting on the lanes. You can definitely see because Pokemon's already holding his own, so I think you can run a Kakao rookie lineup, possibly.
I also think that's best myself. I mean, it just makes sense for them to have that synergy there, and like, I do agree that like although the meta is shifting for the top lane, you can be a lot more flexible in that position.
I tried save. I tried to give you in there.
I like the save Zatai Kakao lineup better on paper.
I don't like the Zatai just because even though he's one of my favorite mid laners, he tends to do really good on new patches and then fall off as everybody else learns the champions that are OP. He just like gets the first. Right. Okay. Trust me. I understand that we're like in a massive shift, but that's only going to last for so long before everybody else catches up, and then he plateaus.
No,
that's what happens every time. Is he just has this like substantial lead because he's so good at picking up champions like new OPs instantly, and then he just plateaus and everybody else overcomes him. And like that used to work out well just because the competition wasn't quite as steep, but like you can't really roll with that if you're trying to make it to Worlds anymore.
Oh. I like to think of him as compact CLG. Like he had so much, like every new patch, he comes out with new promises, with new strength. He actually looks extremely good. Like I remember when he brought out Azir when, like as soon as it was available, I forget which tournament he went up against King, and King, I'm pretty sure, yeah, of course, King won that one. But he played so damn well, and the mid lane matchup was just like JS on. Azir's like JS's Azir's were like kind of was not as good as ZZ Tai.
Yep.
But it is what it is. Like you'll just find out that mid laners will just kind of be a lot more proficient on Azir, and his relevance will be a lot less.
The other thing about Zatai is he started grinding like Korean solo queue, and previously he just didn't care. His Korean solo queue account was at like level 13 or something, but people were saying that since like they introduced Rookie to the team, and they introduced Fly to the team, he started grinding a lot of solo queue. He started playing a lot more. He started because Zatai always had the reputation of not really caring that much. He was just like a talented kind of guy who didn't even have to put in the work. So that's the question. We didn't really see it at WGT. I don't know if they'll try to run it again, but I think that for his fan base, for his Chinese base, they might. But that's the other interesting thing about these Koreans is that they're marketing them really heavily. Like, they pick up these Koreans, and the Chinese fans really like them. Like, the Western fans really like them. And they're marketing them really, really hard. So, yeah.
Moving on, is there any other kind of, like, clarity that we wanted to talk about as far as rosters, as far as starting Koreans, as far as direction? Because obviously, like, LGD, Flame, and Kakao and Rookie are the big ones for Invictus Gaming, but is there any other team that you guys just want to clarify that you heard of?
Well, I would like to just say that I think LGD would have won WGT with their old roster. So,
why do you say that?
Because there weren't really teams there that were better than them at G League, except for maybe King, and they didn't even face King because GamTeam beat them. So
is that making the statement that you think LGD's old roster is superior to their new roster?
No, it's just making the statement that we know nothing about how their new roster is relative to their old roster based on WGT. Yeah.
When they won WGT, wasn't King using a sub? Or am I wrong?
I don't think so.
By the way, another clarification: is Assassin just another name change, or okay? All right. That team. I should actually have these answers, but how strict is that 2 Korean rule? Because noticing the one owner rule being so.
And everyone's complied with the the two Korean rule much more than they have the one owner rule. And that's kind of it's kind of harder to cover up, right? I think it's in part because Chinese fans are especially gravitating. So on the one hand, you have these Korean players who are being marketed so heavily. Like, you can actually go onto QQ and you can listen to Deft's learning Chinese on EDG's like radio station.
To be fair, Deft is really adorable.
And they also have like this show that is pretty much just Pawn ranting in Korean. Like, I don't even understand the appeal there, but they're marketing these players really hard, and I think especially for Edward Gaming, because historically they haven't been a super popular team, and so now that they have these players, it's like this new wave of air. It's this new fresh air. These players who haven't been necessarily
shunned.
Yeah, these players who don't have anything to do with what happened at the start of the year, right? So they have some popularity now. They can market that. They're giving away alpaca plushies for their Christmas special, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
Speaking
for
of
other teams, though, especially with so many fans gravitating to OMG, you have to retain some of that Chinese identity.
Speaking of EDG, this makes like a perfect segue into kind of the next big section that we wanted to talk about, and of course it was the G League finals that were tonight. There's no off season in Chinese League of Legends. They play tournaments year round. Of course, there's an off season as far as the LPL is concerned, but there are far more third party tournaments because Tencent owns League of Legends in China versus Riot. So let's kind of talk about the G League finals, which I'm going to say it, Kelsey, I had the pleasure of going to personally and seeing live, which was fantastic. It was King versus EDG.
I told Ryan Lue you're in China, so you can just back off right now.
It was amazing. King got 3-0'd. That said, I actually thought that King had a fantastic performance against EDG. And I thought that EDG's team fighting wasn't as crisp as it has normally been. I thought that stylistically they looked kind of like a different team, which makes sense because they replaced, in the starting lineup, they replaced Yu with Pawn, they replaced Name with Deft, and then they used Mouth as opposed to FCZF.
Yes.
The mouse change in particular made their bot lane look a lot weaker than King's. I'm not sure how much if it was simply King's bot lane actually being really good and how much was mouse and Deft being a little more passive due to the unfamiliarity. But EDG individually definitely looked strong as players, and they ultimately, they went 3-0, so obviously that says a lot about how they are as a team, even with that kind of setback.
Which is very interesting because, of course, the matchup between EDG and King, you can easily compare it like side by side because they've had that matchup like 3 times now, and this was the most decisive win that King has had over. They've always gone 3-2, 2-1. Like, it's always gone to. Wait a minute, I'm pretty sure there's
3-1. The only time they've ever done a best of 5, they went 3-1.
Oh right, yeah, okay. But it felt always as if King had a foothold in those games, or it was very like, they could win if they did X, Y, and Z. Like, as in, it was a simple path to winning. Not as simple, because I guess it was but like in this series specifically, I felt like because I only watched, I think, 1 or 2 games. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to figure out if I watched the second game before I passed out on my bed because how late it was. But game 1 specifically, it felt like you could see the solo lane strength coming out of it. Like, even depth strength in general was amazing. Now I feel like the only change we'll be seeing is FCCF coming back into the lineup because Mouse played a really good game. He just felt like he wasn't as strong as FCCF. Definitely not.
Did we watch the same game? This is so bizarre. Like, before the show, we had this conversation where you guys were kind of like, oh, King's AD carry isn't very strong, and then you guys come in and you're like, oh, Deft had a great performance.
I think Nohart is good, but okay, so this is my thing with Nohart, and you might not have as much experience with people talking about Nohart as I do, but like interacting with fans and people who've been watching this team, No Heart is, like, to me, as hyped up as STYZ, and I don't think he deserves it. So, I don't think STYZ deserves it either.
Actually,
I think he's a very talented player, yeah, and I want to see him develop, but I just don't think he's as good as people make him out to be. And the other thing is, if you're judging his laning phase versus Def's laning phase, Def notoriously has, like, an awful laning phase. He dies, like, at least twice per lane in OGN.
No, I'm talking about No Heart's team fight ability. Tonight's series, like, this is what I'm going to talk about. Tonight's series, No Heart played amazing in my eyes. Like, his Lucian in game 2 was out of control good. Like, just in his positioning, what he was able to do for the team. And if I was going to call a carry for anyone on EDG, I would give it to Koro. Koro, through all 3 games, he played Aurelia twice. Really fucking put the team on his back and was just a monster. But King, to me, felt like they were solid in every single one of those series, except for maybe game 2, where, like, EDG kind of, like, pissed around and almost threw their lead with their poke comp. But, like, in especially game 1 and game 3, like, King was right there. It almost was a swing back. Like, EDG got punished, like, several times on making a single mistake, and No Heart especially being very strong in his positioning, be very strong in the sustained damage that he was putting out. Like, watching tonight's games, I was actually incredibly impressed with Lei and No Heart.
I've always had I wouldn't say suspicion, but I've always had a thing, like, I've always looked at that King bot lane pretty closely, in the sense that ever since they come out of LSPL, they've always had a very strong laning phase, a really strong laning phase. And then when it came to team fights, you always saw, okay, it was working out too well for that team, in the sense that I've wondered how strong No Heart was specifically, because I felt like Lei was a very, very strong support. And I'm not sure if No Heart was an amazing AD carry that like dawned as, like, really just kind of the STYZ execute, like, just mechanically gifted, or if he was just really, I would say, smart. And as we see him really going up against, like, amazing bot laners, it felt like it's hard to say, because he had, in game 1, from what I can see, his positioning on Tristana was as, like, during chases, I felt like he was going a little bit too far forward, and he was getting blown up immediately when he was doing that. And of course, he wasn't, like, based on that team comp alone that he had, I can understand that, because there wasn't a lot of protection, but he was Tristana, and I felt like in that specific team comp, maybe he should have been playing a little bit more far back than he was playing. And so I would in comparison to his peers, and, like, that are now in the LPL, because yet now you got to compare him to his new competition, I would put him in middle pack, and that's hard to say, but I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how that works out.
I mean, also, we had an... I was just going to say real quick that, I mean, like, we're talking about them individually, Lei and No Heart, but I think we had an assessment on a previous episode that they were essentially apart. They weren't very great, but together they were really good. I don't remember who brought that up, but...
It was Solder, I think.
Was it? That's what I thought it was, too.
Oh. Yeah. And I actually agree with him on that. I think that Lei makes that bot lane, like, really strong. Lei I'll get on just because...
I don't know. I saw King played a very interesting composition. They pulled out a Soraka Tristana lane against, I believe it was Severe Morgana, and they tried to do this twice in the series, but the second time in the final game, EDG caught what they were doing and picked the Tristana away from them when they showed the Soraka early. But here's the thing. Lei on Soraka is not a playmaking support. He's not doing anything for that lane except for heal. So automatically you lose any sort of, like, if there's a carry potential from a support right there. And the fact of the matter is he's playing, then No Heart is on Tristana that game against Pons LeBlanc, and Pons LeBlanc got fed. So you're positioning against LeBlanc that can effectively, like, two-shot you. And King was still taking team fights because No Heart was positioned so precisely that Pawn couldn't reach him.
Here's my thing. Like, Lei, I think, is actually much better at early game warding and setting up opportunities for his team. I think that's what he does really well, is setting up opportunities for his team. I wouldn't call him, like, a super... He's not a mechanical outplay you support. He does that sometimes, but I think that his strengths are in setting up opportunities for his team.
Which
And-
is yeah.
And I think that like the vision transition on King has never been that great, but part of why No Heart can position well in team fights is just because of that interaction between Lei and No Heart in terms of where he sets up opportunities and where he can kind of put vision. But
Which is very
I-
interesting. Oh, go on, obscuring.
Yeah, I did want to note that at least today, No Heart's performance might have been occluded a little bit by Sky and JS's failures to stand up to Koro and Pawn. Because as mentioned, Pawn was playing LeBlanc and Koro was playing Aurelia. Both of these punished the slightest mistake from AD carries. Like he didn't really have any sort of margin of error to work with at all. And that would have not necessarily been true if his solo laners had stepped up today.
That's true. That's a fair assessment.
I think it's also a testament to how how much Koro's improved since EDG debuted in the LPL. Just
Oh my
because,
God, yes.
I mean, like, okay, he was solid, but I mean, Sky is like people regard him as a very, very strong top laner, and if he's able to just like be that decisive now, that's actually really scary. So it's really nice to see that EDG's like Koro has really stepped it up like big time.
That Baron fight where Koro had the Morgana Black Shield on him and he effectively ran into King's team like 3v5 and just decimated them was like incredible. I was looking at Koro and I was like, everyone talks about going and what a monster going is, but I'm literally watching Koro become the next going.
okay, one series.
But Kelsey, I think personally that Koro has been the most improved. Like what Drexen was just talking about. Like
Oh,
Koro
I
at the
agree.
start,
He is my most improved player internationally anywhere of the year. Though I thought he was very good at the beginning, so I guess I can't even say that. But in terms of his laning, I think his laning and his ability to carry, if we just focus on those things, has improved. His team fighting has always been spectacular. I don't know. I remember I did the player I'm most passionate about Koro, and I distinctly said Koro is never going to be the player who can hard carry the team, but he will always do this, and this very well. He's now the player who can hard carry the team. That's a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. I want to go back to Lei, in which Lei was playing the Soraka Tristana into the Tristana composition, and I felt like it was just to get No Heart through the lane. Generally, Lei will play really hard engaged champions. Well, I mean, just like the Thresh. He used to play Braum, Leona a lot. Didn't have that much, like that high of a success rate on Leona. But it goes back to what Kelsey said, in which his role is like trying to create that opportunity. And so playing Soraka felt kind of awkward. And it was just maybe to make up for the fact that Tristana's laning phase is horrible. And generally people, if they'll pick Tristana, they want her into that 2v1 lane. But I guess Soraka is that answer, which is weird. So I'm not sure if this was a good representation of that bot lane currently, but it will. Yeah, it's so weird just talking about the Kings bot lane because I don't think they've had sufficient competition up until this point. And even in third-party tournaments, I've always felt like
that's not sufficient competition.
to this point, and even like with the current tournaments that they've won through, the third-party tournaments, I felt like my suspicions were kind of confirmed with No Heart, but they've performed really really well. But now that we've seen other teams like pick up really solid AD like bottom lanes, I don't know, man. I don't know.
I have to disagree with you, Kelsey. Like EDG played phenomenal. Like they didn't play. It's hard to say. EDG still played like a very dominant team in China, like a top team in China, and now they have two superstars on their roster. And King held their own, and I feel like it was strictly because of their bot lane. Like unfortunately, Sky didn't really impress me much at all. But like No Heart and Lei,
Yeah,
I think kept them in it.
Sky got it was interesting because Sky got like kind of dumpstered by Koro, right? And historically, Sky has been a primary carry of that team, so that was really kind of a wake up call for me. But I think Clearlove played really well again, and just when Clearlove plays well, that team turns on. Also, because he either jungles or he decides not to jungle, and I can go over this ad nauseum. but he played really well, and the team turned on. And we go back to the same LGD versus LGD thing. I think that the Chinese EDG roster would have been just as dominant tonight because Clearlove was playing his game. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And
What do you guys
honestly,
think about the? Oh,
I
go
was
Raz.
just about to say that Sky's Cassidy has never been impressive. Like, he's played it once in the LSPL, and of course that was a win, but it wasn't against a good team at all. And before, he's played in a third-party tournament, and goddamn, my memory is horrible, but even then, he was not performing all too well. It's like, his Cassidy is not as good as his other staple champions. So, there's that.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the picks that they debuted in this tournament, as well as the Korean players, and I kind of wanted to talk about like the stylistic changes because Kelsey, you touched on a very interesting point because we've stylistically been matching up old LGD to new LGD, and you touched on a little bit like old EDG to new EDG, or this form of EDG. And I want to talk about game 2 because game 2 they ran Nidalee mid and they ran a poke comp, and it worked fantastic until EDG decided to make a really hard dive on Nexus towers against King. Like, they just got incredibly, I think it was Gnar, Nidalee, Corki, something like that. They got incredibly cocky, and King, like, they took a Nexus tower, and then King just turned it around and, like, shoved down everything, gained all of their footing back, and EDG had to struggle for like another 10-minute slugfest before they were able to close out the game. And like a couple of times it was very scary for them because they just lost control of executing like a poke comp. Historically, we don't see a ton of poke comps in China, even from EDG, which I would say OMG and EDG are probably the most prominent teams that would run it. We did see kind of a return of Jace when people got back from Worlds just because of Pawn's success. And of course, it makes sense that Pawn was playing this poke comp with this AP Nidalee in the mid. So I want to talk about stylistic changes like that, and do we think that they're going to be going forward and we'll see more of a variation in LPL going forward with all of these star talent coming into the Chinese scene? And then I also want to talk about the Severe pick because I found that really interesting an answer. And Def didn't play it once, he played it twice.
So first of all, the poke comp. There's a long history of EDG with poke comps in which they play the poke comps. They actually succeed okay with them by taking objectives and using the poke comp effectively, and then they screw up when they're in the enemy's base. So literally nothing changed. And
Wait,
that's what happened.
no,
That's what happened against AHQ. That's exactly what happened against AHQ.
Tell me before
yes,
Worlds.
it did.
No, tell me before Worlds when EDG used a poke comp, because refresh my memory, but you is in Ziggs and Orianna effective main.
And I mean, Ziggs does poke, right? And Orianna does poke. They've tried to do like poke styles a couple times where they avoid fighting. And it's not significant, but I think they did it once against IG one game, and it didn't work out, and I think they lost that game. And
let me redefine my language to a siege comp.
No, they tried to play a siege comp, like a siege poke comp, against IG one game in LPL, and it didn't work out very well. So then they tried to play it again at Worlds against AHQ, and it's happened the same. This is the only time when it wasn't so disastrous that they lost the game. So
part of it's just because poke comps don't really have a closing strategy. They usually need walls to throw out the spears from good angles. They need wards and basically routes out that don't involve choke points where they're standing in front of a turret, and none of that's available in the enemy space. So, frankly, they play all right. It's just that the strategy inherently is really fragile, and especially against Chinese teams that know how to skirmish, especially inside their own damn base, it's not. I don't feel it's a good strategy to be using in that kind of environment.
And the EDG, that's just not their natural style. It's not what they're good at. It's not what they've been trained to play as. And part of that, I think, had to do with FCZF, so maybe they were trying it with the mouse, because they had a different support player, a different shot caller. So they were trying, because I think FCZF, one of my big things with him is he doesn't understand disengage. So it could be that that's why they were trying to do this with this team. So that is a note for maybe why it succeeded and didn't fail nearly as poorly this time around, is because they weren't using FCZF.
Okay.
And addressing, do we think that these compositions are going to change? Do we think stylistically China as a region is going to change with the Koreans now coming over and now that we have the solidified rosters? Because again, historically, China has kind of had its own, not subscribing itself to the Korean mentality, except EDG was very much kind of like a baby Samsung Blue team. But throughout majority of the teams, they had their own identity. China had its own different meta. Is this going to fade away?
I think the Nidalee pick will. Like, if you come for a sustain, for a poke comp, Nidalee has a very, I would say, currently a very niche kind of thing going where of course, she deals out a lot of poke now, but it's AP in the sense that, like, you can, once you get, some beef on that team, on the enemy team, it's not going to be amounting to much. And she doesn't have sustained damage to really back it up like Jace does. Jace, if his poke doesn't work out, he still has, a lot of innate just auto attack damage. Nidalee is weird in that sense that maybe you have to hold off and pick and ban phase. Maybe pick her last. You kind of have to pick her last pick because if you go for the first picks, it's not a reliable pick to go off of. And I think it's something that you'll probably only see in preseason where the meta, or at least just in this meta, where top lane picks are kind of pretty squishy. Unless I don't know.
Again, I go back to OMG used to try to run Nidalee at the start of the year.
Get off the Nidalee. I don't care about. I'm talking about a little larger.
Just in general, asking the question, two ways in which asking that question is just there's just an obvious answer. One is they're going to develop without Koreans. They're going to develop because of, and two, yes, they're going to develop because there are more Koreans. And both of those things are, yeah. They developed because they were starting to watch Korea more. They were starting to change more. They were importing Korean coaches just even without the players. And they were thinking more about how can we be more creative like the Korean junglers. Like Edward Gaming, this was something that I had with, a question that I asked Clearlove, and Clearlove said, I think Chinese junglers can be creative like the Korean junglers. And that's some sort of mentality and some sort of thing that they were trying to model. So that's how I think they're starting to, they want to change because they want to win worlds. And two, they are going to change just because they are importing more Korean coaches, more Korean talent. They're going to have to work that in. And that there's no way there's no way that this isn't going to have an effect. Yeah, and it had an effect. It had an effect. Yeah.
Because when we imported Insec and when we imported Zero, Starhorn Royal Club's identity didn't change. In fact, it became even more Starhorn Royal Club, even more Chinese. When we imported Ninja, when we imported Khan, when we imported Axine,
they were bad at team fighting, so they had to figure out a different stylistic way to play the game.
Wei Xiao was still the shot caller, and he was still the farmed side lanes and then group. World Elite didn't, you know what I'm saying?
But that wasn't how they used to play. It affected their style. I'm saying that there's no way changing to these players isn't going to affect their style.
To be fair, importing Exect was basically the best possible personality match for Starhorn Royal Club. That might be the exception that proves the rule.
And I think it's just they're going to have to find different ways to play. We talked about LGD. They played this way, and now they have this language barrier. They have to find a way to work around that. Are they going to use some of the Korean ideas of the players that they imported? There's no way it's not going to change it. It's going to affect how the game is played. And we talked a little bit about Clearlove, and you can make the argument that Clearlove having kind of a lackluster laning phase as a jungler increased up the importance of the jungle talent, but Insec brought it. So jungle, that also contributed to the jungle being more important and more informed.
And they do now play Morgana support, finally.
They've been playing Morgana support forever.
It's
particular. Oh my god, I hate all of you.
No, I totally agree, and I do like Obscurica's example just because the way that Insec was formulated within Starhorn Royal Club is by no means the standard we should set upon for teams doing these mixed rosters or anything else with stylistic changes, just because you said that was just such a natural perfect fit. Obviously it took time to put together and stuff, and it wasn't always perfect, but as we all see for people that have watched Starhorn Royal Club in that form in the early parts of the season. It wasn't pretty, but just naturally, just play style wise, like they could absolve a lot of their issues that they had just because of how stylistically well they matched up, just naturally. And I honestly feel like that's like Starhorn's like some kind of miracle in the way that in how far they made it with the problems that they had. So. Yeah.
Oh god, even the players of Starhorn think it's a miracle. Like, they needed.
How did they even do it 2 years in a row?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, especially with the communication issues, like it's absolutely ridiculous how far they made it with like such a staple part of team play missing from like their lineup.
It just really begs to like the question is like, will they ever really find that team play? I'm not sure. Maybe actually, really, it's going to be awkward to say this because, of course, they will suffer as a team now that they've lost Uzi. But will that really rally them to get that form of team play to make it up in other means? Because I don't know who they're going to get for their AD carry, probably XQ. I have no idea. But it could be a good thing for that team, like a blessing in disguise.
Pretty sure XQ is still on LGD. Like we talked.
Yeah,
about.
no.
Pretty sure it's a random solo queue player.
I mean, it's definitely possible. Yeah, Uzi was the star of the team.
Out a random solo queue player, we know that for sure.
But it's also
random ADC Korean solo queue player has not yet been imported.
The thing is with like Uzi is like
get a Korean.
a lot of people that see him go crazy at Worlds, like they don't understand that domestically he's not really as ridiculously far ahead of the curve as everybody seems to think. So, I mean, there are quite a few free agent AD carries that can fill that role, and like we mentioned in prior episodes, when Starhorn Royal Club was the most successful, it was when they had a more even distribution of gold across the team. So, as Raz put it, yeah, I mean, you could just pick up one of these other talents, and sure, they're going to take a while to reform. This is like the legacy of Starhorn Royal Club. They're probably going to have a terrible spring and almost get relegated. I'm sure they'll figure something out in summer. I don't know how they do it, but it's a little bit different without Uzi. It's not just like Uzi and 4 friends. It's like they're actually replacing just him. So, well, I mean, so far. So, yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see what they do, but I don't think the team is, like, lost without Uzi, just because domestically there's other AD carries that can get close to matching his performance, especially if, like, for whatever reason LGD is able to, like, sell XQ to the team or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, as a random solo queue player isn't necessarily end of the world either. I mean, XQ was more or less a random solo queue player, so...
Faker was a random solo queue player.
This is true.
And that was the confusing thing, because there are so many XQs. I got confused and I thought he was a player who used to be on KXLM, but he actually was just a random solo queue player. So.
Trying to figure out there's another XQ, yeah.
The last thing that I wanted to just wrap it up, because it's coming on pretty late for me and I'm tired. Rankings. I know you guys hate doing rankings, but we finally have locked down majority of the rosters. We've gotten a decent sample size, at least a larger sample size than any of the NA or EU fans have gotten from their teams. Just again, China doesn't really have an off season. We've seen a lot of third-party tournaments. Even if you can make there's valid arguments to make that each of these teams is kind of experimenting with their new rosters. But I want just the top 5 teams of LPL, or that you would project to be the top 5 teams of LPL 2015.
Are we going to the end of the year? Like, how far are we going? Are we going initially, or to halfway through the year, the end of the first split? Are we predicting?
What teams do you think that those variables are affecting? Because that's also a curious answer. Do you think that LGD is going to start out weak, and then as they figure out their language barriers, rise to the occasion at the end of the year? I mean, is that where you're going with that direction of thought?
And that's that's what I'm asking. Like, are we talking about are we asking about which teams will be the best initially, or which teams do we think will be best by the end of the split? Maybe.
Let's do the best by the end of the split. Let's do the top LPL teams of 2015.
This is so hard.
So by the end of summer, then.
Yes, yeah. So last time we said Invictus Gaming, I think is who we agreed on. Invictus Gaming was in there.
Oh, wow.
Obviously.
I think I got my one. I got my 5 teams.
I'm going to beat the curve, and I'm going to say Starhorn Royal Club is going to the World Finals.
Dude, are you kidding? We said are you kidding like last spring, okay? That doesn't work anymore. Their pedigree, man, their like legacy is just not possible. You can't stop the train.
Is it Chris or is it UZI? This is the ultimate question, right? So
Yeah, is it the coach or is it the player?
Who is it? I don't know. No, okay.
Okay, my five.
Like, if we want to
teams-
talk about seriously, I would definitely say the coach, given that impact. Insect have more of a impact in the last iteration. So, quite frankly, if you want to take it seriously, Star Hero Road Club with Insect leading might still be just enough to steamroll into at least the world final, the world championship, if not the finals. I mean,
I don't know.
it's traditional at this
But
point.
now he's up against
He's
even more
actually up against-
steeper junglers internally to even get to Worlds. So
I think it's a lot more difficult for because that's his problem. No, not really. When he was in Korea, that was a big problem. They had that there were other better, or at least junglers of his caliber, but they were smarter, and so he wouldn't really be able to get himself out of his situation through his mechanics or just be by diving because they would already be in a bad situation to begin with. So
Yes, the smarter may actually be a handicap because it's harder to communicate what they want with the team. Whereas all he needs to say is, "Follow me, guys."
yeah, that's true.
yeah, I
That's very
think
true.
that teams importing junglers are going to take a little bit longer to adjust. That's why this question is so hard because I don't know how to rate them by the end of the year. And you want to put like the Dandy Mata team high because they're together and they have this great synergy and understanding of vision, but they have Zune in the mid lane right now, and they have Vasily as the AD carry right now, and I just
Oh yeah.
how
yeah.
much can you feed that? And I don't know. We'll see.
Okay, my 5 teams, by the way, it's because I feel like it'll.
I
You're
waved
welcome.
back at you, but you didn't see it.
My first place team will be EDG because EDG is looking. I feel like it doesn't matter who they have in that lineup. They'll Name, Deft, Even Mouse.
Because Aaron is a god.
They're all clones. They're all clones anyway. Stylistically, it's fine. Swap them out for fun.
Second place team LGD. I think they'll probably do better with Acorn, honestly, but money talks. So I guess they spent so much on Flame because they felt like, no, we need Flame. No, it's okay. Oh, they could actually have Flame as a streamer. I think he'll be a really good streamer.
I think one thing I just wanted to step in and say I think one thing that's crucially important that we're missing that we've talked about before that we're not thinking about with this why would they have these 2 god tier top laners? I mean, if they own Flame, then other people can't buy them or other teams can't buy them. So that's that's a huge deal too. Remember how we were talking? Remember how we were talking? Remember how we were talking about the top Korean garage or whatever that was really awkward in the past episodes? That's what we're talking about here. If they just have a leash on Flame, you can't go anywhere else. That's already strengthening their team because nobody else can get
Pokemon
Flame.
were a Korean player.
It would have been so funny if we just had a China talk in an alternate reality and we're just like, well, what do we think about Vici Gaming buying Save, Flame, Acorn? They just what are they gonna do with all this top lane talent? It's they won't do anything with them. That's the plan.
They'll bench all of it.
Yeah. They're sending apparently.
All
they're
that use
sending
Youngsu.
Deft and Pond to LSPL Hell. Rip.
It's not only just to deny it from the other LPL teams; it will also be to deny it from the Koreans. Genius,
Yes.
genius.
Path to Worlds. Third place team I think will be Invictus because Invictus fan.
Oh, come on, we know better by now, man. No, it's okay. They actually have a legit chance. So I'm just kidding.
They do. I think they have it's gonna be really good for them. Fourth place team King, and fifth I'll have Vici because I think Vici will start strengthening near the summer split, but right now they'll need to work around their current weaknesses, which is I think Zune is a really solid player. I can't even say that with a straight face. I think he does his role well, or at least he did it really well in the expansion tournament. He was able to play off of Amy's strength, and I think if he continues on with that idea, he'll see success. But we'll find out if he really starts picking it up for the competition, because he has new competition now, and he'll probably just come off as a really weak mid laner. But is there surprised me? Something.
Okay. Well, I'd go ahead and say EDG first, just because for reasons I've mentioned, their domestic strength, and although they didn't do well at Worlds, I can't deny that won the most tournaments in the last year by far of any Chinese squad, and they've shown that regardless of like who they have, they know what they're doing and they know how to study teams because, yeah, I mean if they win so decisively against King, that means they've like studied them inside out, and yeah, I don't know, they have the pedigree to back it up, and I can't really see EDG like just falling off. Like I don't know, like if someone
Aaron.
Yeah. they have Aaron, and also it's just like even I feel like there's so much slack in that team. Like if someone like slacks, like there's just like other people that can pick it up. Like there's, especially with Koro having carry potential now. I don't know if I stated that properly, but what I meant to say is that like if someone can pick up someone else's performance of that team easily, and then that they're also strategically strong, and they're also it's been a slow process. So they started doing it in summer as well last season, but they're starting to add variety, and they're not always this like complete stall out team. Like they can play a variety of ways. So and then second, I'd put OMG just because we've doubted them in the past, and they've always shown up pretty well. And now they have Uzi, even though they weren't used to putting so much money into one person. I think Uzi can adjust, or the team can adjust. And before, we were always like, oh my god, how there's no way they're making it to Worlds with this squad. Like, look at how they got crushed by EDG in the playoffs. Look at like Dada7's performance, and they still managed to do it. So I mean, if you just consider that they use a solid support for the entirety of their play, then I don't see them not taking second personally. But that's hard to say because of how strong other rosters are coming up. But they also still do have the communication advantage, so that's a thing. Also, I think Frostgreen just died.
I can't believe it.
That's kind of the end anyway. But
okay, but
yeah.
Anyway, so
in case she doesn't get back.
I can't believe I forgot about OMG. Like that's the only reason why OMG.
Who did you
on there.
put for second? I must have missed what you put for second.
I put it on as LDG. I mean, LGD.
Oh.
No, you didn't. Did
LGD.
you forget LGD? Oh god.
No, I had LGD there as second, and I should have had OMG.
No.
Okay, so yeah, I guess OMG's there, and Vici Gaming's gone. So that's another one. All right, so EDG OMG. So did you only say your second team?
Yeah, I only said second. Third, I want to say I'm gonna feel bad because they're gonna fuck up, but I want to put LGD third or fourth. I don't know where I want to put them. I just think the roster does have a lot of potential, but I do think I'm putting faith in them replacing Chuen at some point, or Chuen massively improving, which I don't think will happen. He's had a long time to prove himself.
Are they the CLG of China?
No, they're not.
Not that bad.
I feel like we talk about them like that all the time, though. Kind of like, oh, LGD could be so good, and this is so good about them. But I feel like we talk about IG like that too, though.
So many teams with so much potential.
So my rankings, I'm going to say during the regular season, OMG will be first, just because they always are. And they'll be second after EDG at the end, just because, again, if you have Aaron on a team and the team is working together and it's not like falling apart internally at the seams, he's proven that he will make it the best team in China. So first, OMG is second place team. I already covered. I think it depends on their support, but even with Dada7, they were able to drag them over the finish line last year. And third, we're going to go with... I don't want to be boring. I'll go with King. I'll go with King.
Oh, nice.
I think it's really close between King and LGD Gaming.
I'm putting King and IG in fourth and fifth, since I didn't get to say that, but that's interchangeable, I feel.
I think King and LGD are really close in terms of, and I think King's, and I also, you have to go back to respect the philosophy of the infrastructure and the way that they're approaching, and that's why I have EDG, OMG, and King at the top, not necessarily because, like, I hate Koreans, but because knowing how they're approaching the infrastructure going forward by having, first of all, knowing the coaches, knowing that OMG is going to improve their practice and bring on more coaches and more analysis, knowing that King has said that it's not about the star players, it's about making the team work, and I think that type of philosophy and that type of mentality has been historically very successful in China. Mm-hmm. I think that fourth, we're going to have LGD because I do think that PYL, I rate PYL very highly. I think Flame is a great player. The one thing is that if you talk about, we talked about OMG and the gold thing before, the difference in like the mentality and the attitude of the players is apparently Wayless is very much of a diva, whereas OMG doesn't really have like the solo lane divas. So now you kind of have this like Flame, Wayless, Imp thing going on, right? So that I think might be more of a challenge to balance out. But I'll put them fourth. Fifth, I will put IG because I do think again the infrastructure is looking really good. I just don't really understand where they are in terms of their roster right now, so it's hard to. Yeah.
All right.
So we're all pretty much saying the same teams, just in slightly different orders.
Oh, I believe in Obscurica though. I believe in him.
Yeah, Obscurica.
That's a star horn
all
somewhere.
Right. No, actually, I think I might actually just disregard Starherd entirely this season, because I just think that losing the infrastructure changes, especially the important talent, especially the other junglers, have changed the situation a lot for them. So obviously I know the LPL scene less well than you guys, but and from what I know, for the most part, I agree. I just don't think that LGD is actually going to rate that highly. Fifth might even be optimistic for them, simply because they're having too much of a good thing. Flame, Wayless, and Imp. You're talking about three different divas, known personality issues that are going to clash and are going to disrupt the team dynamic. And I just can't trust that. Apologies to all of Lord Flame's fans, but that's one thing that's going out.
Yeah, you're gonna have like 3 different carry styles. That's actually an issue that even like going to EU Talk Alliance has. Like if you have too many carries on one team, it gets a little bit muddled up. Like not even a little bit, like a lot. You have to have at least 1 or 2 players like dial it back into a more of a supportive role. Not really so much supportive, but like just kind of like not exerting so much lane pressure. Which, ew. So that's a good point. Any other picks you have?
I think EDG is actually just going to take number 1 spot. They're actually looking pretty damn good.
It's really nice. Okay. So I guess that's the end of the whole team picks, like the predictions. So are we going into shout out mode?
I would like to, but I don't know if Frost is coming back to do her rankings. So what's going
that's
on
true.
with that?
Yeah, I mean, we can start shoutouts, and if she manages to reconnect, then we can go.
Yeah, sure. Let's
Okay.
go ahead and have Raz start shoutouts since he's the leftmost on my screen.
All right.
And he's the
I
best
got it
at
this time. Spend the most time on the shoutouts. Sometime in my middle of the shoutouts, like, oh god, you know what? She came back. Anyways, so my shoutouts, I'm gonna go for Esportspedia, of course. Amazing site. Everyone should like if you have any esports needs. It's like, oh my god, what is the lineup of TSM? I don't know anymore. Just like go on Esportspedia and you'll see, oh god, Odd One's not on the lineup anymore. Oh, thank goodness. It's like
God, I hate being cryogenically frozen.
So you have Esportspedia, you have the great Hubo-chan, and then of course you have you guys in the On Gamers Twitch chat. Thank you for participating in the chat. I don't see enough Kappas, of course. I want to see more Kappas. Even like OGN Manny's, if you guys have like done anything about that one. So yeah, I think oh yeah, and Obscurica for joining the show. It's really nice hearing you, buddy. So
Yeah,
there's
thanks.
that. Oh, I think I got him. I think I actually shot them through.
Okay, I guess Kelsey.
So I run gamers, LL Esports, Nilu, Duraven. I will give a shout out to Inside China Lol just in case, just because I thought he was very valuable, and I wish that he would come back and continue tweeting about the stuff. And I think we had a misunderstanding about certain things, so I am sorry for any confusion. Yay. And just general shout out to our friends in China, Obscurica and Frostgren, and Team Roar. Woo!
The return of Chaos. Okay, so all right, Obscurica, you have any shoutouts?
Yeah, shout outs to the gang at LL Esports. Shout outs to the long suffering crew at the GPL casters. Give Wolf a break. The only worse thing than dealing with the Garena is dealing with the C crowd. Shout outs to PC Gamer for hopefully reasons that will be apparent in the first week of January.
Nice.
And we have Frostgren's rankings just in case you guys want them. She says
Sure.
OMG, Edward Gaming, LGD Gaming, and King. Potentially for similar reasons we've stated. Otherwise, yeah.
Which
Gotcha.
breaks my heart that she's not going Invictus Gaming anywhere near them.
She's been burned too hard by them. This is why I can't put OMG first, just because I've been burned too hard by them. So
It's like being a CLG fan. Eventually, you get tired of the abuse.
Just like let
Yes.
it get out of the relationship.
It's very painful. All right. Well, I'll do my shout-outs, just the typical eSportspedia and the panelists. I would like to thank Obscurica for coming on. It's actually really cool having other people, especially if they're, have knowledge in other regions, just to spice things up a little bit. Shout-out to Frostgren's internet or computer or what's going on. I don't know what's going on anymore. But, yeah, otherwise, do we have anything else to discuss, or I think we're good? Yeah.
I think that should be it.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, yeah. And thanks for tuning in as usual, everybody. I guess we will see you next time. Bye.
See ya.